Hello, everybody. This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. Once again, we are your hosts, Leamon, Mark, and Jay. And today we are going to dive into leadership perks. So the perk category of the leadership ones did not have any emails. So please do send us emails if you have questions or comments or anything like that. If you have topic ideas, if we get a bunch of emails, we might even have email episodes. So do write us at torgdcd@gmail.com and we will read those emails. But let's go ahead and just dive into the leadership perks. We will be talking both official and the semi-official or para-official ones from the backer archetypes. But let's start with Bolster. Bolster comes from the core rules, has prerequisites of needing Charisma 8 or higher, and at least one add in reality. And the mechanics are basically a character can spend a possibility to counter any disadvantage affecting his party on the current drama card's conflict line. This completely negates the conflict line for his side, but has no effect on the rival's result. It can be done at any time the card is still active. So basically, on the hero's turn, where it says heroes, and next to it, it might say anything from confused to flurry. That's called the conflict line. This allows a character with the perk to spend a possibility, and they counter that disadvantage. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on this perk? Pretty straightforward, but...
First thing is we should probably talk a bit about the leadership perk category itself.
Okay, yeah,
that it's
sure.
It's one of the categories that is Cosm any.
Yes.
So anyone can take these from any reality, assuming you have the prerequisites for this particular one. So for Bolster is a very useful one. Gets you out of a lot of tough jams. So the conflict line, of course, is, when you see the VH and, you get flurry. Well, you wouldn't do it on a flurry, but, like fatigue or something. You can cancel that, but it only affects your side. So it doesn't affect the villain. So you have to keep in mind that there's different perks for the two things. If you want to do both, you have to take two different perks. Now, the big question always comes up, well, I guess we actually did discuss this last week, so it actually isn't that big a deal. But if a surge comes up, when does the surge happen, and can you spend a possibility to ignore that?
I would say yes, but yes, I understand that goes with the whole disconnection and surge. When does it happen? I would say with the surge, you could spend the possibility to counter before the surge
before it takes effect.
Right.
Yeah.
But
otherwise, this one's super useful, and I think most of the time it gets played to get around confused.
Yes.
In my experience.
Yeah.
Mark, your thoughts?
So I like Bolster a lot because it's one of the things that makes Charisma less of a dump stat, because you have to have a Charisma for this one. You got to have a Charisma of 8. So you've got something there that makes Charisma valuable. And I think I may be blending again. You guys will keep me straight on this, but I think that there is a complementing perk somewhere that lets you become very vulnerable or something to do this instead of spending a possibility. Or am I isn't Robert doing that?
We'll get there.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of the game. I'm getting ahead of the game, because for me, this is a cool ability, but I got better things to do with a possibility, unless it's confusion. If it's confusion, spend the possibility all day, every day. But fatigue, I'm taking 2 shock. I'm not spending the possibility unless somebody's like, I'm going to get shocked out if we take fatigue. All right, spend the possibility, right? But in my opinion, just taking Bolster, unless you plan to, when we get there, to get the other one, it's because I only got 3 possibilities and I can soak damage with that.
I mean, you could spend Aurore's possibilities and just take the corruption test. Get it back.
Thank you. No, because typically In that case, so let's talk about that for a second, Leamon, because we got the line developer here and we can get Torg official. I have an 8 charisma. I've taken bolster. I spend my Aurora's possibility. I fail to take it back. I lose a point of charisma. I now have a 7 charisma. Can I use bolster?
Nope, you lose bolster and need to get a new perk.
Do you lose it, or do you lose the functionality of it until you get your charisma back up?
It's bye-bye.
That's interesting. I thought it was just needed to take it.
You basically get refunded that XP. If you leave that XP around, get your charisma up, and then buy it back, that's fine. But otherwise, nope, you get refunded, basically. It's involuntary recall.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, if you decided to, because you get to, I guess, sorry, corruption you don't. Injury is what I kind of had. But for injury, you would be making the choice. You made the choice. I'm going to take the chance of my charisma going down. So you know what you're getting into when you make that corruption decision.
Could I then immediately, because you're refunding me XP, could I then immediately spend that on a perk, or do I have to wait?
I would say you could. That would be a game master call. Do you want to stop the adventure, or do you have something in mind and slip the game master note and keep the game going?
Okay, but if I knew it's like, oh, you know what, I'll take this right now, and I say I'll take this perk instead, just cash it out. You would let that happen in the middle of combat?
Sure, if it made sense, that's why I'm saying the game master, because if we think of Torg Eternity as kind of mimicking or emulating a TV series or movie, crazy stuff like that happens all the time, where the protagonist or one of the good guys does something, pulls out something that was never there before, and everybody looks at him like, you could do that.
Doing that.
And I guess we should specify in this case, it's the actual losing of your charisma that does this.
Yeah.
Like being
diminished, a huge edge case
doesn't.
Yes,
just having it lowered by a curse or something doesn't.
Yeah, temporary disadvantages, penalties, that would not do it. This is you're basically permanent loss,
permanent injury. Yeah.
That type of thing. You would lose the perk. You would get refunded that XP. You could put that elsewhere, or you could just hold on to it until you get it again. I believe, and it was similar to this, and it's probably one that we will get to later. We had a Sakellum priest who did that and ruined his charisma 3 times, and one of the perks he had just bought he could no longer use, but he wanted to keep it, so he kept that XP, waited the 3 or 4 acts to take to get it back up, bought it, and then was able to rebuy that perk. So
that could be a cascading failure too, because if you lose the perk, that's a prereq to do another perk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'd be awful. Oh my gosh. So, all right. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. We'll come back out of that.
Yeah, but bolster, yes, I agree. Confused, it is one of the worst things that can pretty much happen to a Storm Knight, in my opinion, besides disconnection, because you can't soak with disconnection, not with not being able to use cards, but not playing cards. Sometimes that hero or drama are your possibility.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I think it's a good, and then it meshes well with other perks that we will get into, and it has kind of a perk that alters it and makes it even more able to be used. Because as Mark, you said, you start off with 3, you can get more possibilities later, but you're limited by the possibilities. So perk, or the perk bolster, I think is one of those pretty good ones, especially if you're going for a support character. So let's move down to this one. It's a Cyber Papacy digital only set. So this one is probably a backer. Follow my lead. Once per act, you may test streetwise to move yourself and up to 4 others through an area by blending in. If the test involves direct interaction with individuals that would be suspicious regarding your presence, then the test is a contest of streetwise versus evidence analysis. each individual in the party would ordinarily stand out in the area. They would each get a -2 penalty, and Streetwise is favored when using it for this perk. So Jay, what are your thoughts about Follow My Lead?
So this one came originally from the Jewish freedom fighter archetype.
Okay.
And I think it very much depends on the kind of campaign that you are running, because this perk is either going to be almost useless or so blatantly overpowered that it's just going to make a mockery of entire scenes, if not acts, of adventures. Because if you've taken this, that means you have probably made your character geared towards this. So you're going to be making some really awesome favored Streetwise rolls.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pretty much, and the fact that it goes against evidence analysis and not find means that you're going to get past almost anything. You want to sneak the party into Mobius's secret base, just let's go. We talked about this before about having the different stealth checks of like individuals running through or having a group. This basically totally gets around all of that and lets you use Streetwise instead of stealth. So yeah, it's very, very, very powerful if your game is an espionage kind of based one.
Mark.
So I'm gonna here's a shocker. I'm gonna kind of counter Jay a little bit on that sneak into Mobius's base thing with this, because it leans on Streetwise. I'm gonna make it work or apply to things that involve the street or being in the street or things that would relate to an urban street environment, so that maybe it gets you past the front gate of Mobius's base, but that's it.
Yeah, if they find you in there.
Once you're in there, you're like, well, I got this isn't the urban street environment. This is a military base. I don't know anything about this. This would never, in my opinion, this should never circumvent a DSR, or maybe it augments a chase somehow because the streets better. I would treat it a lot like you would a group stealth test when you're doing it as a combined action, where the combined action number is a negative modifier to the one person because it's really essentially this perk is really doing what you do when we do a combined stealth test for the party, right? We've got one person who's got a really high stealth, and we're like, you guys got to sneak through this, whatever this thing is in the scene. And so the one person, so everybody go, all right, so everybody see if you can get some extra effort for me. And everybody starts rolling their stealth to see if they help or they hinder. And then we add that all up, and then somebody does the combined action, decrement that modifier to wherever, and then do the combined action for the stealth, and you succeed or not. This just kind of changes it into I'm good at this. Don't worry, I got this.
The one limitation is that it's for yourself and up to 4 others. So if there's 6 of you, too bad.
Sure.
And hopefully you don't have an Edenos, an elf, an aspirant, and a dwarf.
Yeah.
Because that would be -8.
But I think Mark's right. Like, it wouldn't be for going through a secret base. It's more about just getting through. But this is answering that question we always had of how does the Edenos or the aspirant get through the cyber papacy? And this guy's literally made to do that.
and having a couple of ways to do something I always like. So having it be Streetwise versus an evidence analysis instead of prowl against fine is pretty neat. But yes, I would say definitely this is how is your and your table's play style, whether this is going to be super useful or not at all. If you're a group that just likes jumping into things, or my group who my home group will do a stealth, and they will work very stealthfully, get into whatever they're getting into, and then immediately a grenade gets lobbed or something like that. And the stealth goes out the window. So yeah, pretty cool perk. Let's move down to followers. So followers is from the core rules. I guess I forgot the last one also, I believe, was requiring, because we didn't, charisma of 8 or more and 2 or more adds in Streetwise. So follower is charisma of 8 or higher again, and you must have successfully played a glory card to get followers. And basically what followers are is you get kind of a sidekick. You get a single follower of some sort. The Ord, it's an Ord created by the Game Master. You have 36 points of attributes, 12 points in skills, and 2 wounds. And this is one of the perks that you can actually gain multiple times. Each time you can either add an additional follower, or an existing follower may gain a perk. So basically you're paying a perk to get your follower a perk. The player controls the followers in most conditions. It just has little things that you and your game master are going to work out. How loyal are they? When are they going to run instead of, are they going to be like old school D&D hirelings, which they pretty much know they're going to be dead by the end? Or do you actually care about your followers? That's something that each table, I think, needs to determine. And it also just has
suicidal.
Yes, not suicidal. And this one would answer Mark's question. If you lose this and gain it back, you would not immediately get the followers, because it says new followers don't just show up in the middle of stuff. So that takes care of that. Mark, what are your thoughts on followers?
I love the idea. I really, really do. In fact, Jack Preston is built to have a follower, and I haven't. And this is the drawback of follower. Really like the idea, and he's designed to have one. And the problem is, you get to the point where you got to spend that 13 XP or whatever, because I built him up, right? He's beyond beta, and I'm at the point where I'm spending 11 or 13 XP on his next perk, and I'm looking at it going, not really getting that much for the 13 XP. And then I got to spend, the goal with the follower for Jack is to spend, it's just to put some perks on it's going to be his executive assistant who goes around with him everywhere, and to put some perks on her and build her up so that she can hang with Jack, because Jack's a beta tier. And these perks, or these followers, I'm pretty sure the game master is just going to kill it. I feel no compunction about this. Kill it. And you get them back, like you said, but not right away, like at the end of the act or whatever. I just haven't. I think what I'm going to do is, at some point, I'm going to build a leadership character, and I'm not going to buy any perks. I might buy the first one, and then I'm going to start putting all of his XP into skill points until he plays a glory card. And that's his only goal in existence, is to play the glory card so he can get the follower cheap and then build them both up. Wow. So I don't know. I love the idea, though.
Jay.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that the earlier you can take the follower, the better. Because having an extra body, especially if no one else made a healer or anything, or a driver or something like that, can really, really help, having an ancillary character that's fairly loyal to you. I like having NPCs that you can use like this, but the fact that it takes up an entire talent is kind of rough. So that's why I think you want it to be one of those early ones if you can. So hope you get a glory, aggressively trade so that you get the glories.
Absolutely.
Let everyone know what you're doing. And usually people should be good to do that, especially leadership characters in general tend to be more about helping everybody else. So you can always show how magnanimous you are throughout the rest of the session. Say, hey, come on, can I have the glory? I need it.
Well, and keep in mind, if we hearken back to one of our earlier podcasts when we talked about playing for the critical moment, if you're Core Earth, I mean, I can't remember what it is about Core Earth. You can play for your critical moment and dig for the glory card.
Yeah.
And we said you can play for your critical moment at any point, right?
Yep.
So if that glory event kicks off and you're that guy or that girl who wants that glory card, and you're like, I'm playing for my critical moment. Well, you're not doing anything. You're going to lose all your cards, but you get that glory card when it happens and you can play it. So how does that work? Can you the glory hits at 60, say 62, and then now that it's glory, I can play for my critical moment, grab the glory card and play it? Because I've got to play the card.
It's potential glory.
Yes.
Well, but I'd have to wait until the glory kicks off before I drop my critical moment, because I would say that I've got to do whatever I'm going to do with my critical
moment's a free action.
It is a free action, but if the glory is happening on a roll and it's like, okay, that's going to happen, it's not an interrupt, right? So I've got to let that
free
finish.
Actions can be any time.
Yeah, they can, but if it's not that, if it hasn't hit 60 yet and I go critical moment, as a GM, I'm going to say all those cards have to get used right then, because that's your critical moment. And then when you're done with that, then we resume the glory thing. See what I'm saying?
I'd say
because you can't go find it and hold on to it and then wait for the glory to finish and then play the glory. You see what I'm saying?
You would wait until a 60 was rolled.
Yes. Post glory.
But that's not
post
glory.
60.
Post 60, like Jay said, it's a potential glory. It's not a fully actualized glory.
Because you don't have to. I don't believe you have to do a critical moment on a roll. You could just do it, right?
No, but you have to use the critical moment to go find the glory if you needed one.
Yeah,
but you have to be under core Earth world laws.
It's not tied to a roll, so you could do it.
Correct.
Whenever.
Yeah.
So you roll, you get your 60, resolve it, then go get the code.
Yes.
Yeah.
like if you wanted you're going to pass out and you needed a critical moment to play that second wind for whatever reason. That's not on a roll, but that's going to heal you the 5 shock.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad call.
But that is that's
a player. I was going to say players also really like having followers, even if it's not necessarily a wise, like the best investment, of experience. One of the very first online games I ran outside my group was for when Torg was doing the Ulysses Con or Rat Con or whatever they called it. And I ran Muty Town for a group of people. And the one guy after it, he says, "Oh, I'm going to take, this NPC," because naturally they played Glory. Right? I'm going to take this NPC as a follower. And I was like, that's awesome. And I think he survived for a while anyway, but you would occasionally hear about it. So it's neat. And the thing is, you can also tie other things into your follower, because if you have a romantic relationship with your follower, that's a good way of throwing some more possibilities around.
Yeah. And having people that might make a situation be more meaningful one way or another.
Yeah. You don't want to be one of those GMs that just kills the follower constantly, but you do want them to be in danger occasionally, especially in the Nile Empire.
But yeah, I would say follower for certain people who are looking for a sidekick or a relative or some type of love interest. Follower, it works pretty well. You could have we have a lot of singers and personalities in our Wednesday stream, so you could even have like a
groupie,
groupie or a roadie or something like that for them. So yeah, let's move on to Inspiring Deed. This is showing from the Aurorsh digital only set, so I'm assuming this is from an Aurorsh backer archetype. Requires a charisma of 8+. Says the deeds of some Storm Knights are truly inspirational, bolstering their allies and spurring them to acts of greatness. On a test where you have used a possibility and gained an outstanding success, all allies who witness your deed are inspired. Their next action is favored and counts as an approved action. So, what are your thoughts on this one, Jay?
It's from the Inspiring Suffragette or Suffragette. I thought there should be an R in there, but archetype. It's pretty good. The fact that they have to witness it might be an issue sometimes, but making everyone favored and approved, especially if you're the thing I was thinking about, this would be very good on a interaction attack character. Because if you make an interaction attack against some villain or something, and you want to spend a possibility to make it outstanding already anyways, right? And that just makes everybody else's actions so much better.
It'd be great for the taunt. Like you said, interaction, charisma, you need taunt. A lot of things don't have high taunts. And hey, everybody, free favored, and it's like you played an idea card. Yeah, approved action.
Yeah, and as Mark said, and as Mark alluded to, there may be other ways aside from spending one of your precious possibilities to trigger this.
Yeah, but in the right conditions, that's a good expenditure of resources. Where, especially if you're in the dramatic scene, or you're in the middle of the DSR, and God and everybody need to do well, and like, you know what? Let me drop a little Torg candy down, and now everybody's going to do well.
Yeah. So I think we all agree that this one is a pretty solid.
I think it's pretty solid. Probably a lot of people don't even know about it too, because it's in the back.
I did not until you put it out there, because I don't have the digital only stuff. We talked about that before the stream too. I'm going to have to, Leamon, you got to run a Kickstarter soon.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to intense training. This one is from the Beta Clearance Players Primer, which is a PDF only publication that's on DriveThru RPG. So basically, there is a Beta Clearance Primer out there that has some perks and stuff for beta tier. So this one is a beta tier perk, as well as needing Charisma 8 or higher, and a follower from any source. So we just got through talking about followers. So with this one is one of your character's followers gains a +1 bonus to one attribute, a +3 bonus to one skill, a +2 bonus to another skill, a +1 bonus to a third skill, and one perk. This perk may be purchased more than once, but each time it has to be applied to a different follower. So this one is going to require multiple followers to take it more than once. Thoughts, Mark, on intense training for your follower guy?
Yeah, this is a fantastic. If you're going down the follower route, this is the next perk you buy. You get your follower, and then you get this one, because just in the skill points, that's 10 XP in the skill points alone. And whatever bonus that you put that +1 on something that they're good at, you got 36 skill points or attribute points to spend on your follower. So, I mean, across the board, we're looking at 7s, and something is at an 8 if you made them average all the way across. So guess that your best thing is at 9, and so spending that 1 point on their skill that's a 9 to bump it to a 10. I mean, you just got another 20 XP. So this is potentially a 30 XP perk for your follower. That's a huge economy of experience points. How do you not do that?
Yeah, and why would you do follower a second time when you could do this one first? if you do it at beta. Jay, thoughts?
Yeah, that's the key, is that it's beta, so you can't do it at first. Because taking follower a second time just for a perk for your follower kind of seems crazy. But this gives you so much more that it's kind of crazy not to do this. Like, this is worth so much. And the other big thing about this is it's a follower from any source. So that could also be your Drake friend, your saber-toothed tiger, your Stegosaurus mount, whatever.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's a huge yes.
Yeah, so it could go on any of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's if you're going the follower route, this is a essentially must-have. Assuming you're
save up for it the moment you hit beta. Boom.
Yeah, follower or a lot of them are, whether it's a follower or a pet or whatever you want, companion, all of those would work with this. Yeah, I also think it's a really good, solid perk. So let's go to the next one. Lead from the front. So
There we go.
or do we want to go to the is it rally? Do we want to do that one? Or
Do you want to leave this one for last?
yeah, I was looking and going. There's the one that's the flip side that I was gonna.
And then there's the other one that's the even more flip side.
Okay, so let's come back to lead from the front because it's a really good one and it'll make more sense if we talk about other perks. So we'll move on to natural leader. Natural leader is the character may spend a possibility to immediately play 2 cards from her hand into any other character's action pools. This may be done anytime as a free action. So thoughts on natural leader, Mark?
So this is essentially the same thing as being situationally aware with a leadership card in hand. And you don't need the leadership card, you just do it. But you got to spend the possibility, and then you can grab 2 cards and just distribute them, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm doing that with Darby on the Wednesday night stream now, as I'm building my hand based on the things that the party might need on the first round of something. I've got a step A, I've got a leadership, I've got a glory. I got the drive I've got the drive offensively because Darby is my wheelman. And I had a hero card. We spent that, but that's just what Darby's got, so that if somebody needs that, I can be situationally aware, put leadership in my pool, play it, and then distribute the 2 cards whoever needs it. So this sums that up with 1 perk.
Jay,
you do need to have a charisma of 8 to have it. So another reason to have charisma. This is probably, I don't know, in my experience, limited as it may be, probably the most taken perk in organized play. It seems like every adventure I run there, someone's got this, if not 2 people. But yeah, it's just very good. And part of me wants to make a character someday that has natural leader, situational awareness, and occultist, just to see how far things can go.
Yeah, so you play for your critical moment as soon as a supernaturally evil bad guy shows up, but you're not playing for your critical moment. You're just putting all your cards down.
Yeah.
So I will say with Natural Leader, like a lot of these are really solid perks that might not be on the surface, flashy, I get to do something really cool in combat, but these all can really help everybody else shine in that. You know, if you
this
don't
can
need
save
to be,
somebody's bacon,
or save their bacon or anything like that. So let's go to not on my watch. Also, charisma 8+. Kind of get a sense of charisma being very important for leadership perks, and at least 3 ads in find. Basically, when a new drama card is revealed, the character may spend a possibility to eliminate the effects of the opposite conflict line. They mean the villain's line. Positive effects like flurry, inspiration, and up are eliminated. The friendly conflict line, so the hero conflict line, is completely unaffected. So yes, this was the flip side of the bolster. I was trying to remember which one. Jay, thoughts on not on my watch?
I mean, everything I said of a bolster, I guess, goes the same there.
Yes.
I feel that it's not as important as bolster, because while you don't want the villain to have flurry, it's not as bad as you having confused or surge. So it's good to have, but I don't think it's as super key as bolster.
So basically, if you have to choose between the 2, hit bolster first.
Yeah. Or if you have one character in the group has bolster, another has not on my watch, another has the 3rd one, which we'll get to. But
Mark.
I'm gonna differ slightly on that.
Okay.
I think this is the other side. You can't have a coin without two sides on it, and this is the flip side of the bolster coin. And I think that if you're going to build the character that does bolster, you ought to be taking Not on My Watch right behind it, because they're so complementary. And in the dramatic scene, when the big bad has rolled up and he's still stoking 3 possibilities and 5 wounds, and he's going to flurry, or he's got an up and he's got somebody, he's triggered whatever the thing that he does, and he's got an outstanding and they're about to be choked out or something, and that comes up and you can zero it out, somebody just breathed a sigh of relief, because they're just going to have to soak regular damage instead of, whatever the magical MacGuffin thing is that he does that pulls you inside out through a knothole. This is really important at the right moments. Now, that might be, we say this with regularity, this might be an edge case. This doesn't come up very often. How many times in Torganized play do we see that come up where it's like, oh, wow, this is really bad. And it's like that perfect storm of this happened and then this happened and then look, villain up, or look, villain flurry, which means I did my thing and now I get to go again and do my thing again. And I blasted you for a whole bunch of damage, and 3 of you had to spend possibilities that last round. Guess what? I'm going to do that same thing again. Why not?
So my comment, besides I really like it and do see it as a flip side, I would say if I only could take one, or I only had the XP to take one, I would do bolster first. But this is when, if I had production values, the music would change. I mean, there's no music going on now, but there would be like a music change.
If I had production values.
And there would be a PSA little, thing, Torg Delphi Council PSA, and it would be, players, be nice to your game master and get both of them, so they don't have to remember which one. Can you do that or not? So if you're canceling a line there, he has both of them, he can do it, instead of, is that really the one that you have? So be kind to your game master. And then let's go to past lives. So past lives, this is one that actually doesn't have any prerequisite at all. And we did talk about this last time answering questions, not this specific past lives, but one of the reasons why it doesn't have a prerequisite of...
What's it out of?
It is out of the Nile Empire digital only set. I think it might have actually got added to one of the...
It's the Chosen Warrior.
Again,
I want to say it got added to one of the books, but I could be wrong. Basically, in a dramatic scene, recall a memory of a past life. Oh, no, sorry, I was thinking of something else. Forget everything I said about past lives. I was thinking
sounds
dark
like
past.
A flashback.
When everything has similar names. So in a dramatic scene, recall a memory of a past life to inspire the character now. Give up the critical moment to trade a card in hand for any Destiny card in the discard pile and place it in the action pool. So Jay, your thoughts on past lives?
That could be very good. Getting stuff out of the discard is good, as everyone who hangs on to those. Now I'm blanking on the card name.
Sales.
Inspiration or inspired?
The one that lets you grab a card out of the discard or that was just used. Is it Inspiration?
Master
Planner, yeah. Yep. Master Plan is like one of the most sought after cards. This lets you basically do it once in an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, you just have to have something to trade, and it goes right into your pool too, so it's ready to go. If you are in a group and you find you forget that you can even do critical moments a lot of the time, then this is for you. Because it would still be a free action. You can do it whenever, but it is limited to a dramatic scene. That's the only issue with it. So
it becomes an edge case. But when you're looking for that important card,
that's when you're doing it usually.
So Mark, your thoughts on past lives?
Yeah, when you're looking for that important card, here you go. You got an out. But as Jay said, it's kind of an edge casey kind of thing. It's not only the stuff that's once per act, I tend to shy away from because it's very limited, right? I get to use it once per act. And to me, that it's a good game balance thing. So if you make it more powerful, it's just once per act. It's like, okay, you shouldn't be able to do that all the time. But this one is not just once per act, it's once per, you can only do it in a dramatic scene. And so, if you happen to get good cards and you go into a dramatic scene and you happen to have a really good hand, you may not need this power at all. Right. And you go through the dramatic scene and then you have 2 more scenes to go before the act's over. Your perk is done and it too. Right. Because the dramatic scene doesn't always come at the very last. I like to mix it up. I like to put the dramatic scene in different places in an act, because players get to that whole, well, it's not the end. We got to hold all our resources for the end. We already did the important stuff, like scene 2. So this just seems to me like it's a little edge casey and a little gimpy. If you, it's a little gimpy.
I'm having like thoughts of inspire, master plan, past lives, inspire. Because we've had that with just the master plans of, people have gotten 3 possibilities just by master planning and immediately playing that. And it's when you have the choice of possibility, card, or shock, you usually ask who doesn't want the possibility.
Yeah.
I think we got a player or two that who's going to make the right choice is the way they frame it.
I've seen it. I have seen it once or twice where shock was needed because a character was that close.
Yep.
Or
especially since the Pan Pacifica book came out, there's been a lot more of that.
And the other is I do remember we just knew we would not be able to hurt the main villain. Like, we weren't even close to its toughness, so we took cards to try to get those +3s to add to things. So, but no, past lives, yes, very, very specific. But as Jay stated, most people forget the critical moment anyway. So giving it up for something that you don't remember most of the time, even though we had a whole discussion on critical moment and how cool it can be, even if it's cool if you don't use it, how cool is it? So yeah, this is one that I think, depending on your play style, what you like, this could be useful. Dramatic scene could really help.
It's like a lot of the leadership perks, because they're not really flashy.
Right.
They're just good.
When this happens at the perfect time, it's going to be great, and everybody's going to remember it.
But that's the thing about the leadership category to begin with. It's not. This is not the flashy category.
Yeah.
You get really, really cool moments, and you get to be the leader, and you shine. But the way that this character shines is by being the support character that makes everybody else better. And the more leadership perks you have, and the better you apply them, everybody else is like, "Oh, I'm really glad we brought that girl."
Yeah.
So let's move on. The next one we'll talk about is Rally. Rally, you need at least 3 adds in Persuasion, which Persuasion is a charisma. Normally, a charisma is the default. And basically, it is a leader may spend a possibility to remove 2 shock from all allied characters in range of his voice. They specify even remotely. So there's no arguments, hey, I'm doing this over my comm. Yes, it works. They're remote. It still works. It's a simple action, and requires a few encouraging words gesture. So while it's not a free action, it doesn't take your actions. And it says, or even supportive facial expressions to carry out. So you could smile and give the thumbs up. give a little spiel, smile, thumbs up, everybody. On your side heals 2 shock. So we'll go with Mark first on thoughts on Rally.
Spending a possibility to remove 2 shock. I'm not doing it. Now, we'll get there, but I'm not spending a possibility to remove 2 shock. The edge case where I would is so small as to probably have other ways around it. So I'm not doing that, but I love the idea. And if it had a way that, you make a test and you can heal 2, you can heal 3, or you can heal 4, or you can heal 2, you can heal 1, 3, 5, or something like that. Now I might think about it, but just one possibility for 2. Nah, not going to do it.
Jay.
I had a character. Well, I had a player who had a character with this. He was an elf, and all he did, because it says you don't have to talk, is he would just flip his hair and cause everyone to get their shock back. The big question with this is it's all allied characters. Is that including yourself?
Game masters, you and your players decide. I tend to go more of the literal sense. So it says allied, I kind of, not you. But if a game master would say, hey, I think everybody should get it in the party, and as Mark said, 2 shock, in certain cases when somebody's going to fall unconscious, they're going to be KO'd, those 2 shock are extremely important.
And it's not necessarily just 2 shock. Yeah. Like, depending on how many allied characters there are around,
right.
It could be like
per person.
Dozens. Yeah.
If somebody's KO'd, you just brought them back too.
It's an inspiration.
Yeah.
On the conflict line. So,
but that was always my idea, that it would be not include the person doing it, but I could see how it could be worded. And that will lead into some cheesy talk of combos when we eventually get back to the thing we were doing before, like the last one.
If a game master wanted this to apply for the person who did it, I would just be thanking Stuart Smiley, looking at himself in the mirror, telling him,
yeah,
he's good.
See,
enough.
And I would be. I'm in that camp because I like to. Can I zero out a player and play hardcore? Yeah, but this one's already, you're spending a possibility, so sure, you get 2 shock too. I mean, that to me, that's a heavy price.
Let's
remember that.
to go on to Steady On. This is from the Rorsch source book, Charisma 8+. This is the one that I talked about earlier. Sakellum Priest, as soon as he got this, he failed 3 corruption tests for trying to get that Rorsch possibility back, lost this, and had to rebuy Charisma and then rebuy this. So Steady On is when a fear test is called for, the leader rolls her test first. If she succeeds, then all allies within 10 meters are favored on their own fear tests. On a good success, that bonus extends to all ally within the sound of her voice. On an outstanding results, allies no longer even need to test. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Steady On?
I think that aside from maybe the Tea Party perk, this was probably the most flavorful perk in the Orosh book. I really like it. And obviously, you're going to be a high willpower character if you're going to take this at all. So there's a lot of things that cause fear checks, not just in Orosh, all over the place. So this could actually be a very good investment, because I've seen so many times with the party spending the first round very stymied really hampers them.
Or spending ton of possibilities so that you can not be very stymied.
Yeah, exactly. So because being very stymied makes it rough to soak. So I think this is actually a very good one. It's very flavorful, and obviously it's fitting a very specific type of leader. But worth noting, if you're already going to be yelling at people, everyone who can hear you, this would also work well with the rally, just in general, for you to be a loud, kind of person directing traffic.
Right. Mark, your thoughts on Steady On?
I love Steady On. I built Colonel Rasmussen around the idea that he was going to take Steady On, and got it like almost immediately. And Jay's absolutely right. Willpower, build your willpower, max that out as soon as you can, because if you're in a Rorsch, everything is a fear check. Gospog, fear check. I mean, everywhere you go, you've got every Cosm has something. If nothing else, Gospog for a fear check, right? And you max out. If you hit the outstanding, and everybody else doesn't have to even roll. How cool is that, right? And if you're an Auror's character and you build around steady on, and then you hit a Victoria Gloriana, and then you put that in spirit, double dip, touchdown. I mean, I love steady on. It's so cool.
Yeah, steady on, I think, is awesome. Especially with as I stated, sometimes you have multiple people spending possibilities to not get affected by that fear check, and this would allow one person to maybe spend a possibility and save many others from spending theirs. So that was it on Steady On. Let's move over to Pan Pacifica. Has some that came from it. Comrade, the prerequisite is natural leader. Is that the one that we didn't talk about? Or no, is lead from the front. Sorry. So we can go ahead. Comrade, the hero excels at working in conjunction with a group of allies. Says
natural leader's the play 2 cards.
Okay. Yep. Basically, if a Storm Knight takes the exact same action as an ally, whether that's attacking, using missile weapons, intimidating, or a spell or psychic ability, whatever, the test is considered favored for you. And if the person with this perk is using a multi-action, or multi-target, multi-action, they have to do the same thing. So basically, if you do something, somebody else does the exact same thing with the exact same skill on the exact same target or targets, then you're considered favored. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on Comrade?
Well, I mean, let's look at the stream when we were fighting those swarms, and Darby, I rock a Glock 19. 13, 14 damage, and that's pretty much what I do. And then I drive stuff, and a swarm needs a area effect weapon to take them out, and I don't have any of that. I'm putting interaction attacks down. Okay, but that's, if somebody else has already done that on the limited number of bad guys, then what am I doing? I'm just standing around kind of, well, I'm here, I'll soak damage. This gives me the ability to say, you know what? I'm going to make you better. You're now favored on the thing. What are you getting ready to do? I'm going to do that same thing. There you go. Boom, done. Now you're so much better at what you do instantly. I like it.
Yeah, and it doesn't say you have to succeed. So
no, just says you have to do it.
Jay, what are your thoughts?
It's for your test, right? Is favored.
Let's see.
If you take the exact same action as an ally, the test is considered favored for you.
Oh, is it for favored for me?
Yes.
I misread that. Okay. I misread that. I saw that as supporting my ally and not me.
In so many mind, I was gonna say, in my mind, this is good for 2 things. One is approved actions. If we're all gonna be taunting anyway, I might as well make it favored. And 2 is for DSRs. If I could just help, because if you're aiding someone, that's still using the same skill check, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So if I'm not the best at it, but I'm helping someone and I'm putting in extra effort, this is giving me good odds of counting as like 2 or 3 people. So giving a bigger bonus. But yeah, that's really the 2 main things I see with it.
Why couldn't you be the one doing the step and they helping you?
Well, that was with the assumption that they had a higher skill. So if it's something that my character is good at, then yes, it's even better. Right.
Anytime you're combining, this applies anytime you're combining actions, and if you're the one that's actually going to perform the action for a result, standard, good, outstanding, you just pull somebody in and say, here, come do exactly what I'm doing, and now I'm favored.
Yep. So that's good for your good skills, and then
on anything,
and then you can help someone who is way more skilled than you with.
But then your +2/+3 combined action number.
Yeah,
it works either way.
Sure. If it gives you options.
Yes, options are good.
Yeah.
Options are good.
Gives you options and potentially helps if you're all kind of doing the same thing anyways.
So
I mean,
another
to be fair, then you might even want to take some melee weapons or something. You know, if the dwarf's going to be hitting things, you might as well get in there and hit the same guy. Might as well be favored.
So we'll move on. Again, I think that's a nice, solid perk to Mastermind. Once per act during a dramatic scene, the Mastermind may spend a possibility to begin a flashback, which is a whole series of things in the Pan Pacifica book. Any allies in communication with you may also spend a possibility to join the flashbacks. Flashbacks are used in other games as well. I want to say Blades in the Dark has a flashback thing that is kind of cool, where you don't have to necessarily set something up beforehand. You can say, oh, I have a flashback, and then kind of set up what had happened beforehand, which is kind of fun. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Mastermind?
Yeah, Mastermind and flashbacks in general, I think, have been kind of a big game changer in Pan Pacifica for groups that leverage them well, because you could do almost anything with it as long as the GM allows it, because sometimes people will suggest things just make no freaking sense. But I was running it came from the South China Seas a week or so ago, and we got to the end. They were kind of like, well, I have Mastermind, let's do a flashback of us loading a bunch of explosives on board, because there was actually like a secret Delphi encoded message that we got that said, okay, in contingency, you might need to use these. So we had this secret stash of high explosives. I was like, okay, make your reality check. And it went through, and there we go. Really kind of saved their ass, actually. But yeah, it's very good, but it does require players with some creativity and enjoy actually like playing out the flashback itself too. It's just kind of like the equivalent of using a connection card or a nemesis or something. It's a nice way to put a little bit of story in the past and get you out of some trouble.
Mark, your thoughts on Mastermind?
I like Mastermind a lot because it's akin to an aspect from Fate, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is the way that the mechanic for an aspect works is that you have this thing that you do like solid in a fight. You've got that's your character's aspect, is solid in a fight. And so when something comes up and you're like, well, you have to convince the game master why solid in a fight applies to this situation. And then they say yay or nay. And if they say yes, then what you wanted to try and have happen happens. Mastermind is the same way, where, and Jay's absolutely right, you have to have creative players. And this gives the players a lot of agency in the game, and the game master has to be ready to adjust on the fly and be flexible with things, and be open to letting the players dictate some things that maybe you weren't thinking about or planning for. And they're masterminding those explosives in the hold. And that's a game changer, because now they can blow up the thing that's coming at them or whatever. And so Mastermind is there's a lot of back and forth and give and take between the player and the GM there, because the player is going to change the game state to heavily favor them. And you, as the GM, who know the whole big picture for the game, you don't want to let it get out of balance. But by the same token, you can't say just patently no, because this is a thing that their character has that they are able to do. And so they have to convince the GM why it doesn't peg the Hoke meter all the way over and say, well, that's not what you never. Godzilla would not be in the hold of that ship. I'm sorry. You can't pull Godzilla out of this oil tank. The oil tanker does not slide up next to you, and all of a sudden Godzilla pops out of an empty oil tanker hold and fight for you. That's beyond the pale, right? But if you could convince them that maybe you had set up a coded message on the radio that if you push the secret panic button, the Navy SEALs come up on a fast boat and help you out. Well, okay. You call a reaction. Boop, we called the reaction force in. Boom, now they're fighting for you. Yeah. It just depends. You got to be flexible with this one. I like it a lot though, because it lets the players have a lot of agency in the game if they are creative, as Jay said, if they're creative enough. But there's a trust factor there that you got to have for this one to come off right.
Yeah, I like Mastermind a lot. I like the flashback thing, especially with I think it fits, this type of concept fits really good in Torg Eternity, where you have those episodes where you have a flashback of what happened in the middle of an episode. While I can play old school games that you spend so much time planning out every little detail and minutia,
Yeah.
and for certain types of play that can be fun. But I've been in adventures where an entire night is put into that for no reason, and this is a nice way to kind of not have to do it at the beginning. You do it at the in the middle, and you bring it up, and you can go with that creativity, as both of you said, and get on with the adventure instead of going through a bunch of pointless minutia at the beginning, if that's your play style. So yeah, Mastermind needs a mind. Can't remember if I said it or not. Needs a mind of 10 or better. Then we'll move to Simplify the Environment, which is a mind of 8 or better. Basically, immediately after the drama card is flipped, so when you're flipping for a new round, the character may spend a possibility as a free action to cancel the situation line. So the situation line is the extra line on Cosm-specific drama cards. So the booster decks for each of the different realities, they have a middle area that adds stuff to it. This is the perk that cancels that. So you have one perk, the bolster, that cancels what is it? That one cancels the
hero side,
the bad side of the heroes. You have the other one that cancels the good stuff for the villains. This cancels the middle stuff. So I see them all kind of as a package myself. So Jay, what are your thoughts on Simplify the Environment?
Yeah. This is probably the least necessary one, but it depends. I think I've said before, I don't really use the Cosm drama cards that often, so make sure your GM is using them, first of all. But it is worth mentioning that some of those situation lines can dramatically alter things and mess you up. Like in the Living Land, there's one where the players have to go clockwise. Now, in Leamon's table, that's not going to make a difference. But on a
VTT,
there's also one
land all the time.
There's another one where they go in counterclockwise, so that one will mess you up. But or like fires just start or whatever. So they can drastically change things. So they can make like whatever your key attack is suddenly disfavored or something. So it can be quite useful.
There is a Nile Empire card. It might be 40, the dreaded 40 card, that the heroes are set back.
Oh, yeah.
Which means you get an obstacle in Nile Empire, and the situation line says there's an obstacle in it. And it was one that I rolled randomly in, is like everybody was disconnected, boom, all heroes. And then it just set very first card that flipped, and the whole fight was bad.
Yeah.
So Mark, what are your thoughts of Simplify the Environment?
Yeah, the center text, if you're using it, sometimes you're like, well, that doesn't apply at all, and you just hand wave it and it doesn't matter, because like there's a couple of driving things in there, and if you're walking through the land between, well, I'm not driving down here, but then there's one that's like, everybody test reality, anybody who fails, you lose a possibility. Like, oh, we're not doing that. Lead from the front, 0, done.
Only one of us lost a possibility.
Yeah, only one. For now, only one of us lost a possibility. We'll get to that in a second. It's it's that, like Leamon said, it's a package. You get all three of them.
It's kind of a shame, because like if you're using the Cosm specific drama cards in the first place, it's because you want that stuff to happen.
Yeah.
So having someone take a perk to just cancel it is like, well, why am I even using these?
Well, but it's so from a gameplay, players like it when their stuff works.
Yeah.
and they get to do what they're built to do, right? And so the Cosm specific cards let this character who's built to control the deck in this way do that,
Yeah.
right? And that really, I mean, it really does help the players out when they are able to do that. You know, I'm not confused. We don't get fatigue. The villains don't get flurry. We don't lose a possibility. Whatever. And everybody's like, "Oh, good. Thank you."
So now we will go to the last, but definitely not least perk, which is lead from the front. You need a spirit of 8 or more and at least one other leadership perk, because otherwise this one wouldn't make much sense.
What's the point?
But if you're not already vulnerable or very vulnerable, the character may become very vulnerable instead of spending a possibility to activate any leadership perk. So you need to not be any type of vulnerable, but you can do any of those perks by becoming very vulnerable instead of spending a possibility. So we'll go with Mark, because Mark was really wanting to get into this one.
Well, I mean, it makes all of the other leadership perks viable, in my opinion. A possibility for 2 shock, I'm not doing that. Very vulnerable, get shock back. Heck yeah, I'll do that all day. But you only get to do 1, right? Mm-hmm. So you got this stable of 3 or 4 leadership perks. And the first one's free. All right. But after that, now maybe you want to think about taking storyteller, so that if somebody pops glory early on, you get that little pool of possibilities up there, you know, and then you can spend them for other stuff. I would almost say if you're going to do a leadership character, this is the second leadership perk you take.
Jay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. This is probably the best. I don't know if this or natural leader are the best ones, but yeah, the thing about this, what Mark said is true, but it is worth noting that as of the release of the Pan Pacifica sourcebook, that unyielding is no longer tied to Electric Samurai and is just a prowess perk. So you can take unyielding, which lets you take shock to get rid of vulnerable and very vulnerable. So this is where I was talking. Does it heal yourself?
Or gene mods.
Or gene mods, or the that path one where you meditate. Either way. But so the thing is, you can use lead for the front to make yourself very vulnerable to use some kind of leadership perk, and then you can use unwielding to get rid of the very vulnerable and take 2 shock, and then you can use basically as much as you like. You can heal the rest of the party shock with, which heals your own shock, which is why I was asking about this. So you're going to be permanently at about 2 shock. But if you want, you don't have to spend possibilities. You can just take shock.
Yep.
And then if you have a potion, or if you have a gene mod, or if you have another perk or a card that gives you 5 shock, you could potentially do all of these leadership perks in a round with no possibility expenditure. So it can get pretty crazy.
Snap 2 will take away any vulnerable or very vulnerable or stymied or very stymied condition as well. And Zing gets you back a BD plus 1 shock. So there are a lot of ways you can mitigate. You can be a leader and just do stuff, and you're like, what?
Yeah, it would take a while, but I think it would be definitely worth it.
And it is possible to overextend yourself. A couple of fatigues and you're... Again, you can cancel those.
But even though we're talking about you could do all that stuff without spending a possibility, this doesn't require you to go very vulnerable. So if you haven't got to all the stuff, where you can just ignore all those very vulnerables by using the other to get rid of them, you can still use your possibilities that the other ones could require. So whether or not you're very vulnerable, it's not limiting anything. It's just adding a different way to
Options.
trigger all of those. So we want to thank you all for listening to us go through the leadership perks. Once again, email us. We'll read your emails. We'll read your comments, your questions. We'll answer questions that you have. Email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. And until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse.